Welcome back to Talk Tensors, the show where we break down the latest and greatest in machine learning research. Today, we're going deep on a paper that's been making some noise.
Halogen, fantastic LLM hallucinations, and where to find them.
Yeah, that's the one.
Catchy title, right?
It is. It's like researchers are finally admitting that LLMs, that make things up.
Yeah.
And this paper's trying to figure out why.
Exactly. It's not just anecdotal anymore.
Right.
This paper actually presents Halogen, a benchmark designed to systematically measure these hallucinations across 9 different domains, from programming to scientific citations.
It's like they built a giant fact-checking system just for LLMs.
Precisely. And they didn't just test a couple of models.
Oh.
They put 14 different LLMs through this benchmark, including big names like GPT-4.
Oh, wow.
And analyzed over 150,000 generations. What they found was even the best LLMs hallucinate a surprising amount.
Really?
Sometimes getting as much as 86% of the facts wrong.
86%. That's a lot.
It's a staggering figure. And it really highlights the need for tools like Halogen.
To really understand how big this problem is.
Exactly. And the researchers break down these errors into 3 categories: type A, type B, and type C.
Okay.
Type A is like a memory slip. The LLM had access to the correct information, but it still got it wrong.
Like remembering something wrong, but on a massive scale.
Yes, exactly. Then there's type B errors, which stem from inaccuracies in the training data itself.
So it's like learning from a textbook full of typos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No wonder the LLM gets confused.
Yeah.
And then you have the really intriguing type C,
Oh, yeah.
where the LLM seems to just fabricate information, creating these wild generalizations without any basis in the data it was trained on.
It's as if it's trying to reason, but going completely off the rails.
Exactly. The paper has some eye-opening examples of all 3 error types. For instance, in one case, an LLM was asked to provide the educational affiliation of a U.S. senator. The correct information was in the training data, but the LLM still hallucinated an incorrect affiliation.
Wow. So even when I have the right information, it can still get it wrong.
Precisely. It underscores the point that we can't treat LLMs as all-knowing oracles.
Right. They're still prone to making these mistakes.
They are.
So before we jump into specific examples of these hallucinations,
Okay.
let's step back for a second and look at how we got here. The history of language models is actually pretty fascinating.
It is.
And I think it helps put this whole Halogen paper into context.
Absolutely. Early language models, those from decades ago, were quite basic,
Yeah.
relying on statistical methods and limited data sets.
And generating anything resembling coherent text was a major challenge back then.
It was.
It's crazy to think how far we've come.
I know, right?
With the advent of neural networks and access to these massive data sets, language models have made huge GE leaps.
Absolutely.
They can now generate human-quality text, translate languages, write different kinds of creative content, and even code.
It's remarkable.
And a lot of this progress has been driven by, key innovations like the development of transformer models like BERT and GPT-3,
Right.
which have, really revolutionized natural language processing.
They have.
And of course, the availability of vast amounts of text data scraped from the internet, that's played a crucial role too.
Oh, absolutely.
But these advancements, while groundbreaking,
Yeah.
they've also unveiled this new set of challenges with LLMs making things up so convincingly
Right.
that it becomes difficult to tell what's real and what's not. And that's why this Halogen paper is so timely, so important.
I agree. It shines a light on this growing problem, this
Yeah.
problem of hallucinations. And it's a problem that's becoming increasingly relevant as LLMs become more integrated into our lives.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about this classification of LLM errors, this type A, B, and C? Does it effectively capture the nuances of these hallucinations?
I think it's a good starting point for sure. It helps us understand the different ways things can go wrong. Type A errors,
Yes.
where the LLM kind of misremembers correct information.
Right.
It highlights the challenges of knowledge, representation, and retrieval within these massive models.
It does. And then type B, where the LLMs are basically victims of bad data.
Yeah.
That reminds us how crucial data quality and bias detection are during training.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly.
And then you have the type C errors, the fabrications, that really make you wonder,
Yeah.
about the LLM's reasoning process.
Right.
Is it developing biases? Or is there something fundamentally flawed in how it's generalizing from the data?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And the paper accurately digs deeper into each type of error, providing concrete examples
Oh, interesting.
to show the potential consequences.
Okay.
For example, in the realm of code generation,
Yeah.
they found that a significant chunk of hallucinated software packages were actually present in the training data,
Really?
but used completely out of context.
So a developer relying on the LLM could unknowingly use these non-existent or outdated packages
Yes,
and end up introducing vulnerabilities into their
Yeah.
software.
exactly.
That's a real-world consequence we need to be wary of.
It is.
The paper also highlights type A errors in a different context.
Yeah.
They asked an LLM to provide the educational affiliation of a U.S. senator.
Okay.
And in many cases, the LLM hallucinated an incorrect affiliation.
Even though the correct information was right there in the training data,
Wow.
it shows that even when an LLM has the right information,
Yeah.
it might not be able to access or apply it correctly.
It's like it just can't put two and two together sometimes.
Sometimes. And it's a good reminder that these models are still works in progress.
Yeah.
We can't just assume they're perfect and blindly trust their every output.
Right, right. What about hallucinations in tasks like summarization,
Okay.
where the LLM is supposed to be grounded in, a specific piece of text?
That's where things get really interesting. The researchers defined a hallucination in this context as the LLM generating information not supported by the provided text,
Okay.
even if that information happens to be factually correct.
So it's not just about making things up.
Right.
It's about staying true to the source material
Exactly.
and accurately reflecting its content.
Precisely.
So what did they find?
They discovered that most of the hallucinations in summarization came from the LLM misinterpreting the input text,
Interesting.
not from adding extraneous facts.
Okay.
So it suggests that LLMs are still struggling with some core aspects of language understanding and reasoning.
Even in these, well-defined tasks with clear instructions.
Yes, even then.
It really emphasizes that while we've made significant progress, there's still a long way to go in achieving truly robust and reliable language understanding in these models.
I agree.
And the Halogen paper provides a good starting point for, recognizing and addressing these limitations.
It does.
It argues that mitigating these hallucinations will require a multifaceted approach.
Mhm.
Simply improving data quality or making the models bigger won't be enough.
Right.
We need innovations in knowledge representation, retrieval, and reasoning within these models.
We do.
And perhaps even more importantly,
Yeah.
we need to find ways to make LLMs more aware of their own limitations.
Ah, I like that.
Imagine an LLM that could flag its own potential hallucinations
Okay.
and say something like, hold on, I'm not entirely sure about this.
Now that would be a game changer.
It would.
And it leads us perfectly into our novel notions segment.
Yes.
Where we'll explore some outlandish but plausible research ideas inspired by the Halogen paper.
All right, let's do it. Welcome back to Talk Tensors. So we've unpacked the Halogen paper,
Yes.
explored the intriguing world of LLM hallucinations, even taken a quick trip down memory lane
Right.
to see how language models have evolved over the years.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But now let's shift gears a bit and talk about what this all means for you, the listener. You're probably using LLMs in some way already, or you're going to be soon. So how can you use this knowledge about hallucinations to your advantage?
Well, I think awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
Now that you know LLMs have this tendency to hallucinate,
Right.
you can approach their outputs with a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't just take everything they generate as gospel.
It's like, double checking your work.
Exactly.
If you were writing a report, you wouldn't just assume everything you wrote was perfect, right?
Of course not.
You'd proofread it,
You would.
fact check it,
Yes.
maybe even ask a colleague for feedback.
Right.
The same principle applies when you're working with LLMs.
Absolutely. And this becomes even more important depending on what you're using the LLM for.
Oh, okay.
If you're just having fun with it, generating creative text formats, or exploring different writing styles, then hallucinations might not be a big deal.
Uh-huh.
You might even find them entertaining. But if you're relying on the LLM for something more serious, like generating code for a critical software project,
Yeah.
then those hallucinations could have serious consequences.
It's all about understanding the risks
Yes.
and using the LLM accordingly.
Exactly.
So, knowing that these hallucinations exist, what are some practical tips
Okay.
for spotting them?
One of the best things you can do is develop your own hallucination radar.
Oh, I like that.
Pay attention to the LLM's outputs and look for anything that seems off, illogical, or inconsistent with your knowledge of the topic.
Okay.
For example, if you're using an LLM to generate code and it suggests using a package you've never heard of, that's a red flag.
Right, right.
Or if you're asking it to summarize a news article
Yeah.
and it includes details that weren't in the original article, that's another sign that something might be amiss.
So basically, don't be afraid to question the LLM's output.
Exactly. Treat it as a starting point, not the final word.
Okay.
And whenever possible, cross-reference the information the LLM generates with other sources. If you're not sure about a fact or a piece of code, look it up.
Yeah.
Check the documentation or ask an expert.
And don't forget to leverage the power of the community.
Ooh, that's a good one.
If you're unsure about something,
Right.
don't hesitate to ask for help online.
There are so many resources available.
There are tons of forums, online communities, even social media groups dedicated to LLMs and AI,
Absolutely.
where you can share your questions
Yep.
and get insights from others. It's like having a global team of fact-checkers at your fingertips.
It really is.
And it's one of the great things about the open source movement in AI. There's so much collaboration and knowledge sharing happening,
It's amazing.
which can be invaluable when you're trying to navigate these complex technologies.
It can.
But let's take this conversation a step further.
Okay.
We've talked about how you, the listener, can be more aware of hallucinations.
Right.
But what about the LLMs themselves?
What about them?
What if we could train them to be more aware of their own limitations? That's where things get really exciting.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
And it's the perfect segue into our Novel Notions segment.
Let's do it.
This is where we let our imaginations run wild
Yes.
and explore some of the more out there research ideas inspired by the paper.
I'm ready.
So imagine this. What if we could train an LLM to not only generate information,
Okay.
but also provide a confidence score alongside each output?
Interesting.
It could be like, I'm 95% confident that this code snippet is correct, or I am only 60% sure about this historical fact.
Like a built-in lie detector?
Exactly. A way for the LLM to signal its own level of certainty
Right.
about the information it's providing.
That would be incredibly useful for users
It would.
because they'd have a better understanding of which outputs to trust and which ones to double check.
It would add a whole new dimension of transparency and accountability to LLMs.
I agree.
It would be like they're saying, hey, I'm not perfect,
Yeah.
but I'm trying my best, and here's how sure I am about this particular piece of information.
No, how do you think we could actually train an LLM to do this?
Well, it's a fascinating challenge.
It is.
One approach could be to incorporate a kind of self-assessment mechanism into the LLM's architecture.
Okay.
Maybe during training, you could introduce prompts
Right.
that specifically ask the LLM to evaluate its own confidence in its responses.
So you could present it with a set of facts, some true and some false,
Yes.
and reward it for not only identifying the correct facts, but also for accurately assessing its own certainty about each one.
Right.
Over time, it might learn to distinguish between high confidence and low confidence outputs.
It would be like teaching it to be more self-aware, to develop a sense of its own limitations.
It would be fascinating to see if that's possible.
It would. It's a pretty wild idea,
It is.
but who knows?
Right.
Maybe it's the key to building more trustworthy and reliable LLMs in the future.
And speaking of the future, what if we took this idea of self-awareness a step further?
Okay, where are we going now?
Instead of just assigning confidence scores, what if we could train an LLM to explain its reasoning process?
Ooh, interesting.
So it wouldn't just say, I'm 80% sure about this. It would actually provide a step-by-step explanation of how it arrived at that conclusion.
Okay.
Maybe even citing the sources or data points that influenced its decision-making.
That would be incredibly valuable,
Who would?
especially in fields like law, medicine, or finance, where decisions need to be justifiable and transparent.
Absolutely.
Imagine an LLM that could help a doctor diagnose a patient
Okay.
by not only suggesting a diagnosis, but also providing a detailed rationale
Right.
based on the patient's symptoms, medical history, and relevant research.
It would be like having an AI consultant.
It would. Or a lawyer using an LLM to research a case.
Okay.
And the LM not only finds relevant precedents,
Mm-hmm.
but also explains how it determined those precedents were relevant,
Yes.
highlighting the key legal principles involved.
That would be amazing.
It would be like having an AI assistant that can not only do the work,
Right?
but also show its work.
Exactly. It would revolutionize how we interact with these models, shifting them from black boxes to transparent collaborators.
These are some pretty mind-blowing ideas.
They are.
And they really highlight the potential of LLMs to transform how we work, learn, and make decisions.
They do.
But there's a flip side to all of this, isn't there?
What do you mean?
What happens if these models become so good at generating human-quality text, so good at reasoning and explaining their decisions,
Right.
that it becomes almost impossible to distinguish between human and machine?
I see where you're going with this.
What are the implications for trust,
Yeah.
authenticity, and even the very notion of what it means to be human?
Welcome back to Talk Tensors. In these last two parts, we dug deep into the Halogen paper.
Right.
Explored this curious phenomenon of LLM hallucinations,
Mm-hmm.
and even ventured into some what-if territory with our Novel Notions segment.
It's been fun.
It has. But for this final part,
Right.
let's bring things back down to earth.
And talk about what all of this means for the future of LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
These models are rapidly evolving,
They are.
and they're already impacting various industries.
Mm-hmm.
So what can we expect to see in the coming years?
Well, first, I think it's important to recognize that the field is incredibly dynamic.
Right.
What we consider cutting edge today might be outdated tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But based on current trends
Yeah.
and the insights from the Halogen paper,
Mm-hmm.
I think we can safely make a few predictions.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Hmm.
Give us your crystal ball predictions for the world of LLMs.
All right, well, first, I anticipate a continued emphasis on improving the factuality and reliability of these models.
Okay.
The Halogen paper has made it clear that hallucinations are a serious problem,
Yeah.
and researchers are actively working on ways to mitigate them.
Mm-hmm.
We can expect to see advancements in training methods, data quality control,
Right.
and perhaps even novel architectures that are inherently more resistant to fabricating information.
So fewer alternative facts from LLMs in the future.
Hope.
That's reassuring.
Another trend I foresee is a move towards greater transparency
Okay.
and explainability in LLMs.
Uh-huh.
As these models become more integrated into decision-making processes,
Right.
it's crucial that we understand how they arrive at their conclusions.
Yeah.
We can expect to see more research focused on developing methods for LLMs to provide rationales for their outputs,
Okay.
trace their reasoning back to the source data,
Mm-hmm.
and even express degrees of uncertainty.
It's like the show your work principle from math class
Exactly.
applied to artificial intelligence.
Precisely.
I like it. What else do you see on the horizon?
Personalization is another area I believe will see significant growth.
Oh, interesting.
Imagine LLMs that are tailored to your specific needs, preferences, and even your ethical framework.
Wow.
These models could learn your communication style, your areas of expertise, and your values,
Okay.
becoming more like personalized AI assistants
Mm.
that enhance your capabilities rather than just generic tools.
It sounds almost like having a digital extension of yourself.
Right.
An AI that understands you better than you understand yourself.
It's a fascinating concept.
It is. It's both exciting and a bit unnerving.
It is.
But on a more practical level,
Yeah.
I think it has the potential to revolutionize how we work, learn, and even create.
I agree.
Imagine an LLM that helps you write a novel in your own unique voice,
I like that.
or an LLM that collaborates with you on a scientific paper,
Okay.
drawing on your research and insights
Mm-hmm.
to generate new hypotheses.
Those are some compelling possibilities.
They are. But as with any powerful technology,
Right.
there are potential downsides we need to consider.
There are.
What are some of the challenges or risks you anticipate as LLMs continue to evolve?
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns is the potential for misuse.
Okay.
As LLMs become more sophisticated, they could be used to generate incredibly convincing disinformation,
Oh, yeah.
fake news articles, or even deepfake videos that are indistinguishable from reality.
That's scary.
It is. And this could have a significant impact on our ability to discern truth from falsehood, and could erode trust in institutions and information sources.
It's a sobering thought.
It is.
It really highlights the need for robust ethical frameworks
Absolutely.
and responsible development practices to ensure that LLMs are used for good, not harm.
I completely agree.
And it's not just about preventing malicious actors from misusing LLMs.
Right.
We also need to be mindful of unintended consequences.
Like what?
For example, if LLMs become the primary source of information for many people,
Okay.
could that lead to a homogenization of thought, a narrowing of perspectives, or even a decline in critical thinking skills.
It's a valid concern. It's like the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it, applied to our brains.
Exactly.
If we become too reliant on LLMs to do the thinking for us,
Yeah.
what happens to our own cognitive abilities?
It's a question we need to grapple with as we move forward.
We do.
And I think the Halogen paper, by highlighting the limitations and potential pitfalls of LLMs,
Right.
has provided us with a valuable starting point for this conversation.
It has.
It reminds us that while these models hold immense promise,
Mm-hmm.
they are not a panacea.
Right.
They are tools.
They are.
And like any tool, they can be used for good or ill.
That's true.
Ultimately, the future of LLMs depends on the choices we make today.
I think that's a great point.
It's a powerful reminder that we are not passive bystanders in this technological revolution.
We're not.
We have agency. We have the ability to shape the future of LLMs
We do.
and ensure they're used to enhance our lives, not diminish them.
Exactly. It's through continued research, open dialogue,
Yeah.
and thoughtful consideration of the ethical implications that we can navigate the complexities of this rapidly evolving field
Right.
and harness the power of LLMs for the betterment of humanity.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Halogen paper and the fascinating world of LLM hallucinations.
It's been my pleasure.
We hope this episode has given you a better understanding of these powerful models,
I hope so too.
their limitations, and the potential they hold for both good and ill.
It's a complex landscape.
It is. And as always, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning. The future of AI is being written right now,
It is.
and your voice matters.
It does.
Until next time, this has been Talk Tensors, signing off.